So, good afternoon, everyone. It's time to begin the meeting of the Metropolitan Council. Today is Wednesday, November 28th, and I call this meeting to order. The first order of business is the approval of the agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Move approval.
Moved, and take a second.
Jinx.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion is adopted. Next order of business is the approval of the minutes from our November 15th meeting. Could I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion is adopted. Next on the agenda is the public invitation. Members of the public who wish to speak or address the council on matters not on the agenda may do so, but I would just ask you to limit your comments to 3 minutes. I don't think anyone has signed up, but just wanted to offer that. Nope, seeing none, then we'll move on to the consent agenda. Could I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move approval. Second.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion is adopted. Next, we'll move on to the reports of the standing committees. We have a couple of reports from Community Development. I'll turn it over to Councilmember Commerce.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The committee has 4 items to present to the council. The first is item 2018-302, and that is the acceptance of the public comment report and adoption of the final revised 2040 Regional Parks Policy Plan. The council released for public comment a draft of the plan in July of this year, and over the public comment period, the council received comments from 123 individuals and organizations. On October 1st, the Community Development Committee also met with the Metropolitan Parks and Open Space Commission to review comments and discuss revisions to the draft. These improvements that you'll find in the final draft include 5 items of note. First, reiterating the council's commitment to advance equity in the regional park system by establishing the set-aside competitive equity grant program in 2019, as well as developing an equity analysis tool for use with park master planning. Continuing to use the equity toolkit with project review and removing project prioritization from funding decisions. Adding a commitment to collaboratively develop indicators around key topic areas, enhancing the balance between recreation and conservation of natural resources, and also establishing a new 2019 through 2022 work plan summarizing commitments. So, Madam Chair, at the clear risk of being incomplete, I'd like to just make a couple of comments of thanks to staff and others who've been really deeply involved in this work over the last year or more. And again, an incomplete list of those folks includes Claudia Fuentes, who was very involved in community engagement, Tracy Kinney, who I know was quite involved in project management of this work, Libby Starling, Dan Markell, Lisa Brajas, Emmett Mullen. We also had a lot of help from advisory partners, including the MPOSC members and their chair, Tony Russo, and also just many stakeholders, as evidenced by the 120 or more comments, both from organizations and individuals. So I want to express gratitude to all of those people for helping us develop this product for the region. So, Madam Chair, I'd like to move that the council accept the public comment report on the draft update to the 2040 Regional Parks Policy Plan and adopt the revised final update to the 2040 Regional Parks Policy Plan.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Madam Chair.
Member Cunningham.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate it. And I as you know, I had some very real concerns about the issues of equity, access, and opportunity for groups that historically have not been as engaged with our park system as others in our community. And I raised questions about what is the council's role with regards to ensuring that occurs as a part of our responsibility, our public responsibility to ensure that everyone has access to it, can be part of our systems and structures. I do want to say that I recently just finished a book by Robert Reich called Common Ground. And in it, he really lays out the idea that that a part of the role that we have to play is a role of compromise, not just of I'm right and you're wrong. And I think that this document represents some of those compromises. So I plan to vote on this document today and will be watchful from afar as this develops, because I want to make sure that my children and my grandchildren and my great grandchildren can participate as full partners in the park system that we have, and really participate in this. So it's really important to me. And I just want to thank Councilmember Barbers and others that actually reached out and had conversations about how we could actually reach some common ground. I wanted to thank the chair who reached out to me as we had this conversation during the period, and we had conversations. So as a part of this, I know this document doesn't get us all the way to where everyone wanted it to be, but I do think it represents common ground and the ability to compromise across the political lines and across our divides. So I just want to say that thank you for all the work that everyone put into this, and I plan on voting for it today.
Thank you. Member Munt.
Madam Chair, I also want to thank staff for bringing this on 4 occasions to our Equity Advisory Committee. All 4 of their recommendations are reflected in the plan. And the additional piece is the plan includes $300,000 dedicated to an equity parks grant with the potential to expand that with interest earnings. The Equity Advisory Committee would very much like to weigh in on the establishment of that grant so that low wealth communities and people of color can benefit from and plan for how that money is used.
Terrific. Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, I would just echo the thanks to staff in particular for working through this. I've seen numerous versions of presentations, and I'm not even on community development. So I know you've worked really hard to kind of get out and get good public comment on it. So thank you for that. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion is adopted. Next item, Councilmember Commerce.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The second item is item 2018-313, and that action is to award over $9.5 million in Livable Communities Demonstration Account grant funds to support 9 development projects in 6 cities across the region. And upon completion, these projects are expected to result in over 1,100 new housing units, almost 850 of which will be affordable, annual net tax capacity increase of over $1.5 million, over 370 new and retained jobs, 330 of which are living wage jobs, and over $219 million of leveraged private investment. So, Madam Chair, on behalf of the committee, I'd like to move that the council first authorize the transfer of $2,250,750 from the Livable Communities Demonstration Account TOD program to the Livable Communities Demonstration Account Development Program. Second, waive the council guideline that no more than 40% of Livable Communities Demonstration Account Development Program funding be awarded to Minneapolis and St. Paul due to findings that the additional funding would assist projects that will have worthwhile demonstration value and that sufficient funds are available to fund all eligible projects. Third, award 9 Livable Communities Demonstration Account grants totaling over $9.5 million as listed in the business item. And finally, authorize our Community Development Director to execute the grant agreements on behalf of the council. And pleased to present that on behalf of the committee. Our vote on this was a unanimous one in support.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Member Munt.
Madam Chair, I think now is a great time at the end of the year to acknowledge that since the creation of Livable Communities in 1995, we have either preserved or created 22,000 homes. That is really significant. So thank you to staff for all of the hard work for Livable Communities.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion is adopted. The next item, Councilmember Commerce.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The third item is item 2018-314, and that is to adopt payment standards for the Metro HRA rent assistance programs effective January 1st, 2019. We recently had extensive discussion at the November 5th CDC meeting and the November 7th Committee of the Whole regarding the HRA payment standards. The general direction from each of these meetings was to increase payment standards to ensure housing voucher holders are successful in finding rental units while allowing access to units in all neighborhoods. The proposed action will require an additional $900,000 in general levy funds, which will be reflected in the final 2019 budget that will be before the council for consideration next month. This option will allow issuing all housing vouchers. Council members have directed staff to convene conversations as well with policymakers across the region about the HRA structural deficit and options for addressing this critical issue. This problem is not unique to the council, and so a broader conversation, I'm sure, will occur and ensue. So therefore, Madam Chair, I move that the Metropolitan Council adopt amounts listed in Table 1 of the attached business item as payment standards for the Housing Choice Voucher and other rent assistance programs effective January 1st, 2019.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on this item? I appreciate Councilmember Commerce, you kind of reiterating the direction that we had provided to staff, especially in kind of having and convening that regional conversation. I think I said this during the committee of the whole discussion, but I think I also really do appreciate the fact that we're managing to outcomes in this program, and that really trying to figure out how we continue to do that regionally is, I think, really important. So I appreciate you recognizing all that in your introduction. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That motion is adopted. Thank you. One more item, Councilmember Commerce.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The last item also relates to the Metro HRA's work, and that's 2018-315. It's to revise the Metro HRA administrative plan to reflect recent changes. The Metro HRA is required by HUD to adopt an administrative plan that establishes local policies for administering the Housing Choice Voucher Program. This action makes revisions as shown in the body of the business item to cover two areas. First, the Metro HRA was recently awarded 89 mainstream vouchers to provide federal housing assistance to homeless persons using the transit system as shelter. Secondly, HUD recently granted the HRA a variance to the Housing Quality Standards inspection criteria for multifamily units that include an interior bedroom without a window. New 2- and 3-bedroom units with one windowless bedroom are coming onto the market in opportunity areas. Families were previously unable to access these units due to a HUD standard that requires all bedrooms to have a window. And so, Madam Chair, I move that the Council approve two revisions to the administrative plan to, first, incorporate new language for the award of mainstream vouchers, and secondly, incorporate language regarding a housing quality standards variance for these windowless bedrooms.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion is adopted. Next, we'll move on to the Management Committee. Councilmember Chavez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is business item number 2018-316. It's the same week item. The subject is the proposed council bylaws amendments. At its November 14 meeting, and again its meeting today, the Management Committee discussed proposed amendments to the Metropolitan Council's bylaws, which were last amended in 2012. Proposed bylaw amendments were proposed for the Council's November 14 meeting. Major changes are listed in the background section of the Management Committee business item report. The Management Committee discussed a Code of Ethics section, which originally was adopted by the Council in 1991, and a Conflicts of Interest section, which is based largely on the conflicts of interest provisions in Minnesota's ethics and government statutes, which apply to council members and other public officials. Madam Chair, the proposed action at this time is that the Metropolitan Council, 1, approve the proposed bylaws amendments as reflected in the draft in the report, and 2, rescind the Metropolitan Council Resolution number 2011-34. And as a reminder, the amendments to the council's bylaws requires a 2/3 vote of we appointed members.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I think we also have a presentation on this item if we want to have Dave kind of run through some of the changes so that we all are on the same page. Welcome, Dave.
Fine?
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Council members, I think what I will do, if it's with the chair's approval, just go through the major changes in the bylaws. There's a lot of grammatical things as switching things around, but it doesn't really change the meaning of the bylaws. The first major change is on page 2, and the document I'm looking at is the November 28th version of this. It has some yellow highlighting. If you don't have that, I have paper copies if you don't have it on your tablet. So the first change is on the highlighted, major change is the highlighted provision is new section 11. If you look down to paragraph F, there was a recommendation from staff to delete the executive committee. During management committee discussions, they indicated that they found those meetings with the chair very helpful. And so what we've done is move it up to a duty of the chair under section 11. The next major change is on page 3. It's a provision that requires council members to attend council meetings. This is consistent with the statutory requirements. It's also consistent with, well, it's a statutory requirement, so we just put it in there to make sure that everybody's on board with that. The next major change is on page 4. This it's the highlighted text. The current bylaws state that 9 members of the council shall constitute a quorum for the purposes of a council meeting. With discussions with the chair and others in the last week and a half, and given the transition that the council goes through every 4 to 8 years, we thought it would make more sense to indicate that the majority of the appointed members constitutes a quorum. And if there are 2 or 3 council members missing, that would move it from a 9-member to an 8-member quorum. It's fairly small, but I think it accommodates some of the interests that the council has. The next major change is on page 5. Paragraph D, it kind of states the obvious that the council will comply with the Minnesota Open Meeting Law, but it also is sort of an administrative tool. It identifies that the council can't meet on certain dates and it can only meet in certain hours on other days. Those are all statutory and just it's for convenience. It's right here. We don't have to look it up every time. The next major change is in paragraph A at the bottom, deleting the Litigation Review Committee as a standing committee. And the reason for that is because in 2012, this council amended its bylaws and gave litigation management responsibilities to the chair and the regional administrator in consultation with the council. The next major change is on page 9. The deputy regional administrator, what this does, it's again, it's administrative convenience. It identifies what signature authority the deputy regional administrator has when the regional administrator is absent. This was adopted by the council in 2011, and what this would do is sort of codify the council's bylaws so we don't have to go searching back in 2011 council actions. And one of the actions here is to rescind council resolution number 2011-34, and that's the resolution that conveyed those signature authorities onto the deputy regional administrator. The next major change is on page 10, Code of Ethics. This is the Code of Ethics that was adopted by the council back in 1991. It sort of codifies it in the bylaws so we don't have to search back for, 30 years now to figure out what those Code of Ethics are. The next major change is at the top of page 11. Again, this is administrative. Back in 2005, I believe, the council adopted rules governing conduct of council and pursuant to statute, and this would codify what the council did at that 2005 action. The next major change is at the bottom of page 11. The bylaws currently say that there shall be 1 hearing before this council at a previous meeting before you take an act on it. That was enacted way back when it was all paper. We all have electronic access now. Just we thought it would be more efficient to make it through 1 meeting. The next major change is on page 13, bottom of the page. The highlighted provision was added following some discussion at the management committee to make it obvious and clear that Metropolitan Council's members can apply for and be appointed to chair of the Metropolitan Council. we were not intending to infringe on the governor's prerogatives in that way, so. The next change is on page, I think that's it.
Thank you. Are there any
Sure.
questions? Seeing none, then I think we can take a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion is adopted. Terrific. Thank you. Thank you, Dave. Move on to Transportation Committee. Councilmember Rodriguez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. 2018-325 deals with the proposed amendment to add Riverview Modern Streetcar LPA to the recently passed Transportation Policy Plan. We did just have a presentation on the Riverview project. As a reminder, Ramsey County, due to delays that were beyond their control, just missed being included in the original TPP. They have now provided the appropriate information to meet criteria to propose the addition of the Riverview Modern Streetcar LPA. The action today is to release the draft for public comment and set a hearing. I therefore move, Madam Chair, that for the purposes of holding a public hearing and receiving public comment, the Metropolitan Council release the attached draft amendment to the 2040 Transportation Policy Plan to add Riverview Modern Streetcar, locally preferred alternative for public review and comment, authorize a public comment period from November 29th, 2018 to January 21st, 2019, including a public hearing on the draft document to be held on January 9th, 2019 at 4 p.m.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion is adopted. The next item on the agenda is an information item to talk about accomplishments of the council from 2011 to 2018. Did I miss something? Okay. So this is my last council meeting as chair, and so I really thought that it would be a nice opportunity for us to take a minute to celebrate the work that we've done as a council, but also most importantly that our staff have really done and accomplished over these last years. I recognize that we're often on kind of a day-to-day basis really with our heads down focused on getting our work done, and we often don't take the opportunity to kind of lift our heads up and actually recognize that there's been some pretty substantial accomplishments over these last 8 years. And so I wanted to take some time to do that and welcome, at least to begin with, Mary Bogey, our CFO, to talk a little bit about some of those accomplishments. She'll be joined throughout the presentation by our various division directors to really highlight those achievements. I know that there's copies. Everyone has copies of this kind of a highlight version. There's a lot of detail here. It's kind of fun to read. I encourage you to read it if you haven't already. But with that, I'll turn it over to Mary to kind of lead us through the presentation. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, council members. Today it's my pleasure to be before you not to present a budget presentation full of colorful charts and tables, but instead to reflect on the accomplishments during the Dayton administration. So over the course of the last 8 years, the council has made significant contributions to the region's prosperity, livability, and sustainability. These successes are the results of partnerships and regional collaboration and the direction that you have given to the council. In 2014, the council adopted a 30-year vision for the region, Thrive MSP 2040. Under state law, the council prepares a long-range plan for the metropolitan region every 10 years. That plan sets the policy foundation for systems and policy plans developed by the council, including our transportation, water resources, regional parks, and housing policy plans. Adopting Thrive 2040 was a 4-year process that involved engagement and input from our partners and community members across the region. Thrive identifies the region's growing and changing population and establishes 5 outcomes to guide the vision of the region: stewardship, prosperity, equity, livability, and sustainability. It also identifies 3 principles that ground and guide the council's work: integration, collaboration, accountability. Thrive set the foundation for many accomplishments that have happened in the following years, and it was an accomplishment in itself, for the first time including equity as a key outcome and underscoring the importance of shared prosperity among all living in the region, and including critical issues like climate change, water supply, and housing segregation in the plan. As part of the equity outcome, Thrive looks for new and more inclusive approach to community engagement, including the creation of a public engagement plan. The council collaboratively created this plan over 18 months with community organizations, residents, and stakeholders. The result is an engagement process that places the needs of the people affected by regional decisions at the center of the engagement efforts. The establishment of equity as one of the 5 key regional outcomes contributed to a region-wide focus on eliminating racial and ethnic disparities, and the council has played a key leadership role in elevating the importance of equity as a component of all regional issues and providing a lens for decision-making. While all 5 outcomes are important to the region, we wanted to spend some time highlighting the accomplishments the council has made related to the equity outcome. So the Equity Advisory Committee was created to advise the council in its work to advance equity in the region and engage residents and communities in decisions that affect them. The MCUB program encourages more contracting with small businesses owned by people with disabilities, women, veterans, and people of color. Diversity of our own workforce has increased. In 2017, 27% of our workforce were people of color. That has increased to 34% in 2018. At the manager level, in 2011, the council had 12% managers of color. That's increased to 17% in 2018. To be successful, the council knows that we need to attract and retain our workforce. Metro Transit launched a very successful new training program focused on putting job seekers on the path towards full employment as mechanics and technicians. The program allows for career and college readiness programming, support towards earning a degree, and a paid internship. Since 2015, more than 100 people have participated in that program. Also, a very good example of integration of Thrive into our funding decisions and collaboration between our divisions. The grant made by the council, $250,000, to defray the cost of connecting a manufactured home park to our regional wastewater treatment system, and thereby improving our efforts to preserve naturally occurring affordable housing. Beyond equity, we saw successes on all of our regional outcomes. The council is a leader in sustainable and renewable energy use. In the last decade, efforts to conserve and recover energy in our wastewater operations have yielded annual savings of more than $3.5 million for our customers. In 2018, we began a new partnership with Xcel Energy to make all of our electricity purchases 100% renewable by 2040. The council has subscribed to community solar gardens and led an initiative with 31 government partners to create a subscriber collaborative which saved money and has allowed more participation among local governments who could not have done that on their own. The council has maintained its AAA bond rating. That's very important. It comes from how we manage this organization and having good financial practices. It allows us to go to market and get the lowest possible rates in the market. And what does that mean? That's about 25 basis points as it relates to our interest rates that we pay. That's a big deal. The council has about 4,500 employees, and they belong to 11 union contracts. And we have 3-year contract agreements with all but 2 of those in place. We self-insure our healthcare. We've been doing that since 2002, and that's helped us really contain those costs related to healthcare, both for the employer, the council, as well as for our employees. When our premiums are lower, they're lower for our employees as well. In the first 3 years since we were self-employed, we kept our rates flat. And since then, we've had reasonable rate increases, and we have choices for our employees. We can do a high deductible plan or a higher coverage plan. We also have an on-site clinic here at Robert Street, just across in the Skyway, and one planned for the Haywood campus in 2019. Again, that's a low cost, no cost for employees who use that clinic, and it is also the lowest cost for the council and the program in total when we go to those clinics rather than visiting your doctor's office or an urgency room. In 2018, the council made a significant change to family leave benefits by providing parental leave to any employee adding a child to their family. And then we've also found many opportunities to strengthen our relationship with local governments. And the one I'm just going to pick to talk about here is the sewer availability charge. And the council created a community task force to look at the outdoor seating and other issues related to the sewer availability charge. And the outcome was really adopting and streamlining what was very complex mechanism for calculating our SAC charge to something that's got significant support of our local partners and is much easier for us to implement. So, again, just a good example of partnering with and engaging our customers.
That's one of my favorite examples for partnering too. Zach.
There we go. And then finally, for me, I'm going to go back to that budget book. Think back to your first experience with a budget presentation in this council and how that budget was presented. And I hope that you feel that we've moved in a direction of more plain language and made that information more accessible by the way it's both presented to the council as well as it's presented in the budget book that we put forward. So back to my colorful charts. And with that, I'll open for questions or move it on to the next presenter.
Any questions or comments on that first part? I feel like we could easily spend a lot of time really getting excited about all of these things. And as you said a number of them, I was thinking, oh, that's right. Oh, that's right. So it's nice to kind of highlight. So thank you. Because now we'll welcome Lisa from Community Development.
Good afternoon, council members. Thank you. I'm excited to present this to you today. I've been here for almost 11 years, more than 11 years now, so your term. So it's hard to think back of what we did 8 years ago, but like Mary said, a lot of the work we did originally in their first 4 years was in the planning process, especially in community development and engaging with local governments. And I think a highlighted theme of all of the work I'll be talking about today has been how much our division collaborates across the region, both with local governments, but also with state agency partners and nonprofit organizations who are working in that same space, especially where we're not talking about systems, but some of our bigger regional issues. So I wanted to say very high level that the council has played a really strong leadership role in the creation and preservation of affordable housing in the region, provided award-winning planning support to local governments, generated valuable research and data for our regional partners and for our local government partners, and contributed to the creation of livable communities. In 2014, the council adopted a new regional housing policy plan, its first in nearly 30 years. This was a major milestone for the region. The plan establishes the council's broad housing policy direction for the coming decades and focuses on creating housing options that give all people viable choices for safe, stable, and affordable homes. Our Metro HRA is among the best in the country. This is our other operational contribution to affordable housing. In 2017, it earned the highest ranking possible for program operation from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for the 14th straight year. The effect of this ranking means the council is able to maximize the number of households served with rent assistance because of its effective and efficient service. The council continued to support the expansion of the regional park system and saw a record-breaking number of visits to regional parks. In 2017, we hit 58 million visitors. That's pretty amazing when we go around the country and when we hear from other regions around the world. Our park system regularly tops those national rankings and worldwide rankings of things that people wish they had in their region and are working to have. That coordination of a full system across city boundaries, of having great natural resources and access within this region is something that makes ours stand apart from others. And finally, we, in community development, awarded more than $83 million since 2011. Councilmember Munt mentioned earlier our total Livable Communities program production, but I'm just going to talk about your 8 years here. Since 2011, in redevelopment projects through this program, we assisted in creation of more than 2,000 units of affordable housing, numerous jobs, and the cleanup of lots of contaminated land across the region. We also played a major role in the strengthening of local partnerships. Part of that is through our award-winning support to local governments in both the Planet program and the development of the local planning handbook, and in our sector representative program, where staff are committed to working with local government staff, being available to them in their place of business, not requiring them to come here to see us and work through their issues, but being out in their communities. The development of the handbook took not just community development staff, but staff from across the council to do that work. So we have to thank all of our colleagues in all of our divisions, but also local government staff played a key role in helping to shape what was needed in the handbook to help them get their plans done, how we could make it more accessible, more plain language, and more nimble to adjust to changes, which did happen over the course of the last 4 years, changes to legislation, new rules like critical area rules, new resources from our state agency partners and other leaders in different fields that we're able to make available to them on a very quick and timely basis. We received a national award from the American Planning Association for these efforts. In addition, we've been prioritizing sustainability and efforts to plan for, mitigate, and adapt to climate change, including the development of a climate vulnerability assessment, which we presented portions of to this committee in the past. The assessment helps local communities plan for and manage public infrastructure to increase its lifespan and reduce costs, in addition to helping our colleagues across the council consider how climate change impacts the infrastructure that we're responsible for planning for and operating. So with staff across the divisions of the council, we've been working to advance climate change adaptation and mitigation, and we recently accepted the Minnesota Climate Adaptation Award for an institution for the council's organizational efforts, as well as our research and technical assistance to local governments. And before I turn it over to Lisa Thompson, I'm happy to take any other questions for you. We have lots to highlight, but we'll leave it for there today.
Thank you. Any questions? Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilmember Commerce, sorry.
That's okay. I just want to make a comment. There's a lot to say about each of those accomplishments and priorities that Lisa just called out. I want just to single out, in particular, the pretty dramatic steps around climate change adaptation and mitigation that community development has taken and really, I think, implemented in very short order some tools that are really concrete and usable for communities in ways that would be very challenging, I think, for them to have established and put in place individually. And if you remember, in the context of our Thrive discussions, there was some misgiving, some questions about whether climate should be featured in a prominent way in that document. I'm so thankful that this council chose to move forward with that. And really, in many ways, the best evidence for climate change has been climate change. And over the last 4 years, we've seen increasingly vivid examples of what that could mean and what it is already meaning for us. I think this is really a great example of the council responding to a regional imperative and bringing something of really, quite dramatic value to our local partners and to the region as a whole.
Thank you. I would wholeheartedly agree with that. And I think I was saying actually in our all staff meeting earlier this week about the importance of some of these key outcomes that we identified in Thrive and really elevating the discussion around the region. And we're kind of uniquely situated to be able to do that. Even kind of if you look at city government or county government, having some of these conversations about sustainability or equity and outcomes and things like that, we were able to really kind of bring it regionally and have a really robust engagement process through the creation of Thrive and through however many public meetings we engaged in. I remember when I was at the the county engaging in providing feedback and really um, participating in some of the public meetings from that perspective in the creation of that document. And so I do think that there was really an amazing opportunity to kind of set the platform for that conversation. And I think that's been really effective. So thank you. And next we'll move on to environmental services. Lisa Thompson, welcome.
Madam Chair and council members, you know environmental services has a role in wastewater, water supply, water quality, and we're the regional wastewater utility that provides services to our entire region to protect public health and the environment and to foster economic growth. Well, that's 250 million gallons a day of wastewater treatment serving 109 communities. We couldn't do that without a lot of infrastructure in our system. And so thankfully, you've helped us invest over $1 billion in maintaining, preserving, and expanding that for future growth. So you're leaving us in good hands in terms of serving the future. So we thank you for that. We've got a lot of national recognition, so we're going to toot our horn a little bit tonight as being a utility that's known to be efficient. So we've talked about our retail rates being 40% lower than our peers. Well, I'm here to tell you today we're 40% lower, 41% lower, a little bit better than we were. So the recent survey released, we were hoping we wouldn't slip a notch. We actually went up a little bit, and 1% is kind of small, but we figured it was worth saying we're on the uphill side. In 2016, we were one of the first utilities to get a new award called the Utility of the Future. And that was for our demonstrated application of collaboration with partners in the region, as well as looking at wastewater not as a waste, but as a resource, where we had started to recover resources from it. And there's a lot to be recovered from wastewater, and as that becomes efficient, we will do more. And our 6 facilities that have gotten platinum awards for multiple years for their environmental compliance are chief among our accomplishments. In fact, 2 of our plants have 27 and 26-year records. That puts them in the top 5 in the country, and that's Hastings and St. Croix. Let's see. So I've looked a lot at the history of environmental services. I've been around a while, but there's some interesting early history to learn from. And I would say that environmental services was really established and founded on a lot of the principles that make up Thrive. So it's been pretty easy for us to embrace those in our work. But during your leadership, we've raised the bar in collaboration, and we're championing collaboration as an essential principle for creating a better regional water future. A few examples of how that collaboration has led to innovation and forward-thinking projects that are benefiting the region. We're just around the corner at the Saints Stadium, where we've partnered with transit as well as the city of St. Paul to recycle rainwater for irrigation and non-potable toilet flushing. When we did the 2040 Water Resources Policy Plan, we took an integrated approach to water supply, water quality, and wastewater collection and treatment. And we brought a lot of local government into the discussion so we could determine the best way to move forward and to have partners ready to work with us. In 2015, the council collaborated with communities and regulators to also update the metro area water master supply plan. And that charts a future to ensure that the metro area will have adequate water supplies now and in the future. And then we've had some really outstanding community task forces that have really ensured us finding a good path going forward. So with the help of a community task force and working with our local government partners, the council was able to reduce the amount of rainwater that flowed into our wastewater pipes to the point of being able to avoid spending $1 billion in other improvements that would be needed. And this has also allowed us to end a combined sewer overflow permit, which our peers typically have ended up being in consent decrees with EPA because they were in a spot where they had to do something, but they couldn't get the money and the resources to do it. And we've ended ours, and we're not in a consent decree, so we stand out in really good ways. Then with the help of a community task force, the council developed policies to guide potential reuse of treated wastewater for non-potable purposes like irrigation and industrial processes, which is going to allow us to leverage and preserve our clean water sources for population growth and economic development. And as you've heard recently, the success of our SAC task forces, we've done some significant work there, and we've got some pretty popular feedback in terms of being surprised at what we were able to do together. And lastly, I don't want to wreck the possibility here, but we've learned that we're a finalist for the Governor's Better Government Award, and this isn't for science. It's for diversity outreach project that we've been doing. Started with a grant program through Diversity OEO, and we've kept it going. We've got some really strong partnerships developed with schools, and we're a finalist for an award, so we're happy about that too. I'll turn it over to Nick Thompson, unless you have some questions or comments.
Councilmember Rummel.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Lisa. One of the things that always amazes me about our environmental services is that our outreach goes much further than many of us really understand. Early on, when we first came on the council, there was a stormwater reuse manual developed, and now it isn't just used in the region, but it's gone all across the state. And another one I'm thinking about is all the work that's been done understanding our water supply, our aquifers. That research, which is cutting edge, is being used all across the region and then beyond the region across the state. So we reach beyond the region, and no wonder we're considered efficient, and because we do things that other people need done.
Yeah, it's really impressive. Other comments? Thank you so much. We'll welcome Nick Thompson.
Madam Chair and council members, happy to talk to you tonight about the accomplishments and the two hats of MTS that we have, the long-range transportation planning and our transit operations. We play a major role in guiding the long-range transportation planning, and as you know well, these projects take a long time to build. But if you think just back from 2010 to now, how many projects have been funded, built, how many groundbreakings you've been to, ribbon cuttings. This transportation network has really changed quite a bit. And that's because we've had good plans in place, long-range plans working with our partners. In January 2015, this council adopted the 2040 Transportation Policy Plan, which provided quite new direction based on Thrive for investment in the region. You created the first regional bicycle transportation network, one of the first in the region, in the nation. You know, so it's a truly multimodal plan. We have plans for all modes in our region, and building a network that is really important for our region to grow and to support quality of life. Just last month, you approved the update to that transportation policy plan, and as actions tonight, you're starting to update that update. And so there's, though it's a long-range plan, there's a lot that changes. And in that update, we've got new funding, new investments just in a few years for transit, new highway funding that we had to reflect. And we're starting to deal with that future with new technology and automated vehicles and other things that will really change, that could change how transportation serves our region and meets our goals for the region. Since, you know, we have a special function of the council as the MPO working with TAB. We really work closely with our transportation partners at city, county, and nonprofit levels to really deliver this network. You've been part of awarding $1.4 billion in federal transportation funds for highways, for major transit investments, for bike and ped, for safety. And that $1.4 billion leverages a tremendous amount of local dollars. Many of these projects leverage more than 50% from county or city or state investment to really deliver these goods. And those investments reflect the priorities of the region. They are modernizing our system. They're expanding where we can. They're creating a safer system for everybody in all modes. So that's something that nearly 200 projects have been funded through that regional solicitation. Many of them are in service right now, and many under construction, and we're about to award another round of them in the next couple months. And so it's a program that is well accepted, that is based on principles that this council really helped define, It's kind of held up as a model for in the country of how we quantitatively judge our projects, and everybody has a chance to compete on them. So a lot of good projects get done through that. And then through our planning and our collaboration with others, you really see their investments pay off. We've been tracking our transitway investments and how development has spurred on that. Since the start of, or since 28, or looking at 2018, we've tracked $8.4 billion in new investments along the LRT lines in the region. These developments are those that are open, ones that are proposed, or ones that are about to be started. And that number is just going to grow with our expansion of Southwest LRT and Botno coming behind that. In terms of our operations head, as the region grows, we need a transit system that works for everybody. That's comprehensive. We work hand in hand with Metro Transit. You'll hear from Brian talk about our award-winning system. We provide elements of that fit in so that we meet the needs. I'll focus tonight mostly on Metro Mobility because there's been tremendous amounts of changes in that you've really shepherded through. We've had 50% growth in ridership and Metro Mobility since 2010. That system continues to grow, and we're meeting that demand for a service that really is essential to the users. It connects them to jobs. It allows them to have as normal life as they can, and we provide a high-quality service. But with that growth in demand, we've had to make lots of changes. We had a service model that was in place from 1994 to 2015 that really was straining at the seams, that this council really supported a lot of changes. Rebuilt that model. We incorporated a lot of technology. Just the simple thing that customers no longer had to transfer if they crossed one of those boundaries. Key elements and key decisions that really made it a better service. And even recently, you've approved the increase in driver wages to $16 minimum. That has really allowed us to attract a good workforce, retain that workforce, provide great quality. So that service continues to grow. It's a challenge that we've met, and we continue to adopt it and add technology and other elements in there so that we can provide that to our region. So we look forward to growing that. And before I turn over to Brian, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I would just want to highlight a little bit on the Metro Mobility public meeting that you had in October. And earlier, I think Mary mentioned the public engagement plan that we adopted, and just the kind of principles of how we engage with the public, and also how we kind of create these inclusive meetings where people have the opportunity to provide feedback. I mean, that meeting was the highlight of my October. It was so inspiring to really see the way all these people showed up to provide their input about how they interact with Metro Mobility. And interesting comments come up about like drivers not being able to make left turns and like things that you otherwise maybe wouldn't be able to kind of pick up on themes, but you kind of hear it in a meeting in a space like that. And I just feel like that was, there's a lot of really good work going on there. So just wanted to highlight that. Thank you. Now we'll welcome Brian Lamb. Welcome, Brian.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members. What's changed since 2011? Well, as Bill just pointed out, I had less gray hair. But importantly, I think when we look at, as you've heard me say many times, we're creating the transit system of the 21st century. And a part of that, you have to understand where we are in terms of that growth. In the early 2000s, we were creating the first lines. And that was kind of the infancy. As we moved into your tenure, what you see is the emerging of the teenage structure of a system. And it's building as we speak. And part of that system is, and part of your responsibility that you've done really very well, is you're preparing to hand it off to the next generation, which will see the full maturity. If you think about what we are doing right now, it's really setting up for the 2020s, which allows the rapid expansion of this transit system and the network, which you have not only endorsed, but found the resources found the partnerships to make it happen. And I think truly that's a legacy that you can be proud of. That's also a challenge because sometimes if you concentrate just on building without operating and maintaining at the same time, you're not going to achieve the ultimate goal. And the ultimate goal of the transit system is to provide access to opportunities. But also, as the council recognizes, that it's important that we walk the talk, that we end up being a leader in the community, not only in terms of kind of what we espouse, but how we go about doing business. And one of the things that this council has absolutely been able to demonstrate in is its commitment to equity. And if you look at the structure of the system, if you look at the things that this council has done over the course even of the last year, putting in the new transit assistance fare program, which in the first year, over 1.2 million people have ridden transit using that low income fare. It's a true legacy statement for this council. Ridership is the currency that we oftentimes, at least I do, measure the success of our system. And we are coming out of a generation of growth in the last 15 years that we hadn't seen that sustained growth in 100 years since the era ending 1918. And if you just sit back and think about that, in today's environment where so many competing options are available, to be able to say we've invested and we've invested wisely, not only for today's community, but with the focus in tomorrow's community as well. It's truly, I think, a legacy of this particular council. So it starts not only in terms of where you put the routes and where you put the investments in the mega sense, but it really starts with the understanding that the bus stop is the front porch to the system. And one of the things that goes unheralded oftentimes, but really is an important point of investment in this council in the last several years, particularly the last 3 or 4 years, is the investment in the bus stop. The bus stop signs used to just be, there's a bus stop. I don't know what route stops here. I don't know when it runs. I don't know how frequently it runs. I don't know where to get information on it. Every single bus stop in that system now allows that customer to solve that equation themselves. Giving that customer, empowering that customer, taking that mystery away from that customer is something this council can be proud of. So it extends not only the bus stop itself, but the expansion of the shelters, the focused effort on trying to say, where do we really need to make sure we are providing the equitable investments in terms of shelters, in terms of heat, in terms of light. And as the Transportation Committee heard just this last week, we are right on track with our investment plan over the course of the last few years. Truly a success story. So as we move on into the next generation, I think one of the things that I'm really excited about is that we're not doing it under a bushel basket. This system that you have invested in and supported is not only being recognized locally by our partners, but is being recognized nationally as well. And we can tell that partly because we won the National APTA Recognition 2016, but truly any one of the council members who've traveled throughout the country and had an opportunity to talk with our peers throughout the country recognize that we are oftentimes looked as the leaders in certain areas. And that, to me, again, shows your foresight and really is your support for the growth of the transit system. So one of the things that we really are excited about is building out that system even further. And I'd like to spend a couple minutes talking about the build out of the rapid bus system. The rapid bus system, as you know, started a couple of years ago with the implementation of the A line going down Snelling Avenue and connecting over to Hiawatha, intersecting the Green Line at Snelling and University. And it's been a huge success, and one that we are emulating by building right now. And we had a tour on Monday of the new Penn Avenue in North Minneapolis. And it's not only just what is going to be created in terms of an ABRT, but we are actually helping the neighborhood ultimately gain some of those improvements that are so important. For the first time ever in my memory, actual boulevards have been kind of reinstituted along Penn Avenue between Broadway and Lowry Avenue in conjunction with Hennepin County. The combined partnership is really starting to manifest itself, but it will allow us to continue to grow this system. And the D line along Chicago Avenue and into North Minneapolis on Emerson Fremont is not far behind. But more importantly than that, we're stacked up and we are ready to go. We have a system here that will ultimately allow us to grow this using a relatively modest investment, but to grow our projected ridership by 45 to 50,000 people a day over our current base. And I think that is something that this council has both not only supported, but really championed over the course of the last several years. If we take a look at where we are right now, there's a story behind each route. There's a story behind each one of these transit corridors and a lot of gestation period that goes along with each and every route. But as we look at where we're going, in each one of these transit ways are in some level of development, this is truly the piece that you're ultimately leaving behind to the next generation, and something that you can take quite a bit of pride in, I believe. So with that, Madam Chair, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Do you want to talk a little bit about any of the recent highlights or just maybe the news from today?
Well, Madam Chair, I think we were expecting, but we were very pleasantly surprised at the timing of the announcement from the Federal Transit Administration that said the Orange Line project that you've been working on essentially for 20 years, that is currently under construction, we are in there as full partners. And they have committed a $74 million match to bring that full funding package together. So now we don't have to live on just a prayer to MnDOT that please keep construction going, that we can actually have the financial wherewithal to complete this project on time and on budget. And of course, I was mentioning earlier that it seems like for 10 months of this year, we're pushing the rock uphill all the time. The 11th month, it just seemed to hit the peak, and we are finding momentum. And of course, having a long sought after concurrence from the federal government in terms of our LOMP, letter of no prejudice on the Green Line, allowing us to award the contract, the council to award the contract, and ultimately commence with the groundbreaking this Friday at 2:30 p.m. Be there or be square, is really a tremendous accomplishment. And we shouldn't lose sight of that a third competitive grant was awarded just this last month as well. And that was an $11 million competitive grant to allow us to finish the financial plan to build our desperately needed sixth operating facility over in Minneapolis. And so truly that partnership with the federal government has been a very important one, but one that this council has really worked hard on developing and maintaining, and really deserves a lot of credit.
Well, thank you. Any comments on that? This is great. Thank you so much. I just think looking through this list of accomplishments is so energizing. I've only been really having the privilege to serve with you all for the last 18 months, but this is such an impressive body of work. I think staff have the responsibility of taking the guidance and the policy direction that we provide and implementing that. And the main translator and interpreter of our direction to staff is Wes Koistra. And so I also just wanted to take a moment to thank Wes for his leadership and being able to kind of steward and implement actually all of the things that the policy direction that we provide, and then also really supporting each of our division managers. So I just want to say and recognize Wes for a minute and say thank you.
Thank you.
Give him a round. And being the RA is really not the easiest job. You don't get to say yes very often. Wes and I often joke about like, can I please say yes, please? Do I get to say yes once? Like, no, sorry, Wes. But really just want to.
It's a pleasure to say no for you, Chair.
I also want to thank all of our division directors really in leading your staff to implement this amazing body of work that's really quite impressive. So I want to just say thank you to that. Council members, really only having been with you for 18 months, it's been a tremendous privilege for me. I think that going out into the community and hearing from cities and community members that, they feel like they're really engaged with their council members. They may have different feelings about the council itself, but I often hear, but I really like my Met council member, and they're really engaged. And so I think that you have all taken this responsibility very seriously and elevated the level of engagement in your districts. And just want to say thank you so much for doing that. And I think that that's it for my thanks. Unless I've forgotten anyone, feel free to text me if I've forgotten to say thank you.
Madam Chair.
Sure. Member Rodriguez.
Thank you, and thank you for this wonderful presentation. I don't want to get it. I knew this was going to happen. It's a great reminder about all the good work that happens here, and I know I'm not leaving right away, but it's hard to move on. I really believe in what we do here, and this is the evidence. And that's a lot. I've seen firsthand the work that goes into that. There's a lot of messy meetings. There's a lot of effort, and it's due to the excellence of our staff and also my colleagues. And I really I've treasured this time. So, but I bet you thought by putting this out that we would not talk about you. But guess what? I'm going to. I complimented Chair Dunnick for being so accessible. I called him Chair Adam in his final meeting. And I'm really so glad that Chair Helene followed suit, because Chair Cherimoff is a mouthful. But you also have been really accessible, and I'm grateful to that. I'm really grateful to your leadership and being able to hit the ground running. I remember hearing you on NPR. It was like within days of you being appointed, and I was like, dang it, how did she learn that so fast?
Kate Brickman.
Yeah. And I'm still impressed by how quickly you learn and process and make good decisions, really good decisions. I got to see your brilliance and determination firsthand in moving Southwest LRT into construction. We really needed you to hit the ground running, and really grateful. And now we have full funding for the Orange Line. So I just want to say it's just been an honor serving with you.
Great.
That's what I was going to say, by the way.
Super. So thank you. That's very kind. So I think that wraps up. I want to just have reports from council members. If council members have reports that they'd like to share in the last kind of week, since I guess we had Thanksgiving, but we can have Member Dorfman.
So it's I mean, obviously, how long have we been here, Deb?
Almost 4 years.
4. So obviously for, a little less than half of the rest of you. But when we hear this, so it's interesting because when you come, the impression of the Met Council outside of this building and all of the work we do is really different in many ways. And when you come in here, one of the things that's really struck me in the almost 4 years is that there's a perception of the Met Council as this controversial body and the work that is done by all of the staff as being so controversial. And then when you get here and when you see it and when you start to sort of take stock of the work that's done, and this only what was done today is like a fraction. It's some of the really big stuff, but doesn't get at sort of the ongoing stuff that happens every day. I almost look at this agency now really differently than when I was outside of it. I see it as an academic kind of agency looking at demographic data and challenges and trends and providing that information throughout the region, which is really critical not only to us at the Met Council in terms of setting policy, but to local elected officials and staff across the region. We're a direct service agency providing absolutely critical services, certainly around transportation and housing and other issues. And we're a land use planning body, really looking at the future of the region and how do you create and what sort of investments do we need to make to have a economically strong region in the future. And there's nothing, I know it's a big organization and there's a lot of money that goes through the Met Council, but there's nothing sort of controversial about all that. It's just sort of smart regional planning. And so it's interesting to me that I still think there's so much we need to do around what happens here that we need to convey in a different way to the larger public so they have a better understanding of the importance of having a regional body like this and the impact it has, today and in the future. And so I hope you did. And when I was listening to some of that, and even though I wasn't here, I was also, in addition to knowing that Aileen in just a really short time had a tremendous impact here. I spent years trying to talk to TCW and you negotiated. But so did when I hear the housing policy plan. Sue Haig wanted that really, really badly. It was really important. We hadn't had one for 30 years, right? And you all worked really hard with her to get that done. I think that's just a really stellar accomplishment of this Met Council. And Adam, too. So the chairs matter in terms of leading that. And then, the other thing when I think of all this stuff is had a lot of support from the governor to be able to do this work and have sort of the back of the Met Council, even when lots of people from the other party or just in general were talking about how controversial the governor was there. And so I just want to mention that. Thank you, Aileen, for the time you spent here.
Thank you. Any other reports from council members? Member Munt.
Madam Chair, I agree with everything that's been said, and those of us in this room are like family. We are a group of people who share values and a belief in our ability to improve people's lives. And I've worked at the council for 7 years, and I've served for 8. And there's 2 things that I've learned. First, in our regulatory role to manage growth and to protect water quality, we are going to attract critics. And the second thing is that in 8 years, I've never met a local government official that felt like they were getting their fair share of our services. So you aren't going to make a lot of friends there either. But I think those of us in this room can't be afraid of the criticism. We have to toot our own horn and talk about our accomplishments and reshape how people feel about the council. And I think the work that we've done putting a human face on the council has moved us ahead significantly. And for that, I'm grateful to everybody in this room.
Thank you. Any other comments? I will share just briefly. I think just in the next couple of days, I have 2 days left, but there's a number of items that we have left to do. I think Brian talked a little bit. Sorry, I know I'm a little bit of Taskmaster. We're not done yet. I have 48 hours left. The Minneapolis Regional Chamber is going to have a conversation about critical issues on transportation on Friday morning, so I'll be participating in that at around 7:30 with some national transportation experts to talk about kind of where we are on investing in transit and just infrastructure in general. We'll have the groundbreaking at 2:30 on Friday, and then we'll have the opportunity to kind of do a little bit of a reflection on Almanac on Friday evening. So there's some fun things I think ahead just in the next couple of days, but also be able to reflect on all the great work that you have all done and that we've all done together. So thank you very much. If there are no other updates, then I would take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, anyone?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Anyone opposed? We are adjourned.